Good evening. My name is Kevin Haggerty, and I am president of the League of Women Rotors of Marin County. And I want to welcome you to this 2024 Gala dinner. This is our annual event in which we celebrate the work we do. We have a wonderful program for you tonight that will conclude with a presentation by Dr. David McCuan of Sonoma State University, who will talk about protecting our democracy in times of strife. Was that my lead-in song, or? Oh, okay. So before we start, I want to introduce and acknowledge our League's officers and board members. What I'd like to do is to introduce the board members, ask them to stand up, and if you would hold your applause until everyone stands up. It'll go quicker. So first of all, Vice President Dee Batori. Dee, you here? There she is. Secretary Ann Wakely. Treasurer Lori Nadone, and our board members, Vita Harban, Carol Joy Harris, Carol Inklis, Becky Bengay, Jan King, Sue Ream, Barbara Strong, Cindy Wagner, and Nancy Wilson. Please give them a round of applause. I would also like to introduce some of our guests tonight and acknowledge those who have made this event possible. First of all, we have 5 members of our Student Ambassador Program with us tonight. Would those members please stand up? Okay. Thank you. The Student Ambassador Program is jointly sponsored by the League and the Register of Voters of Marin and includes high school and college students who reside in Marin County. Those mission is to educate and register young voters. The Marin program this year has over 30 participants. We also have several members from the Marin Transforming Justice organization here tonight. Please stand up and be recognized. I also want to acknowledge that we have a number of elected officials with us tonight. I want to thank them for the work they do and for coming and supporting us tonight. Next, I'd like to formally acknowledge our 17 event sponsors. Those contributions help us pay for the valuable work we do. Their names are noted on the signboard as you came in and also on the table toppers. So please take a look at their names and acknowledge them when you can. I also want to acknowledge the members of our Gala committee. Those hard work and organizational skills have made this event possible. I ask Chair Sue Ream, committee members Cindy Wagner, Carol Joy Harris, and Gabrielle Turney to stand and be recognized. Finally, I want to thank all of you who have taken the time tonight to attend this event and for supporting the important work the League does. Now on with the program. It is my honor to introduce our immediate past president, Ann Wakely, who will make a special presentation.
I am so, is this working? The other one? This working? Okay, all right, this is the one I'm going to use then. I am just so delighted to see so many wonderful people in the same place at the same time. I just give yourselves a hand. So I have something really fun to do. Each year, the League of Women Voters of Marin County presents our Community Service Award to a deserving individual. The award was established in 1990 in honor of Bunny Lucetta, who was aide to Senator Peter Baer, and she passed away when she was really at the prime of her career. Many league members had worked very closely with Bunny and wanted to honor the wonderful work she had done for the community. So we created this award. We present the award at our fall kickoff. And one year, a league member is honored for their service to the league. On alternate years, a community leader is honored for their outstanding service to the community. So last year, in 2023, the board decided that we needed to honor two people, not just one, for their outstanding contributions to folks in our county, specifically in the critical area of public education. These two were Dr. David McCuan and who retired last year after serving for 14 years as president of College of Marin, and our own Mary Jane Burke, retired superintendent of Marin County Schools, and by the way, a longstanding League of Women Voters member. Mary Jane could not be with us when we presented the awards at the fall kickoff in September, but we have a second chance because she's here with us right now. Mary Jane served 7 terms as the Marin County Superintendent of Schools. That is 28 years of service to our county's young people and the folks who educate and care for them. We are not honoring her for how long she did this, although that's very impressive, but for how she did it. Throughout her tenure, Mary Jane's vision for Marin County Schools was to do what it takes to provide the highest quality programs and services for all students. Her commitment to equity and her determination to do what is best for the kids, together with her boundless energy, seemingly, and her ability to collaborate and work with others was key to her remarkable success and is her legacy. Mary Jane, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, it is my great pleasure to present you with the League's Outstanding Community Service Award for 2023. I have to find it. Just a minute. I lost it for a minute. Okay, I'm going to read this to you, Mary Jane, and to everyone. In recognition of her extraordinary leadership as superintendent of Marin County Schools for 28 years, her unwavering vision to provide the highest quality education for all students, her advocacy for special education, alternative education, and programs for foster and homeless youth, her ability to collaborate with others as demonstrated during the COVID crisis, and for her many years as a dedicated champion for public education in Marin County.
Thank you so much. Hello. I have to get your attention before you all start talking again. This is such a friendly group. I'm happy to be here tonight representing the League's Education Foundation Board. I am Kay Noguchi, and the other members of our board are Ann Wakely, Ann Batman, Scott McCuan, Lori Nardone, Elaine Biagini, and Kevin Haggerty. We thank you, League members and friends, for your ongoing partnership with us to help students at the College of Marin. Under the leadership of then Board President Julie Monson, the Education Foundation decided to try our hand at fundraising. With advice from the College of Marin's Director of Advancement, Keith Rosenthal, and League member Pam Cook, we reached out to members and friends for the first time in 2018 with a challenge grant from the Foundation's assets. Now, after 6 successful years of challenge grants, we need your help to cross the finish line. Thus far, you have contributed $4,000 toward the Foundation's $6,000 matching grant. Help us meet our goal to send $12,000 or more to the College of Marin to answer 2 important needs for students. We are funding a first-time effort to assist with transfer application fees for students hoping to continue their education at a 4-year college or university. And we will continue to donate to the Student Emergency Assistance Fund, started by the college in response to the COVID epidemic and meeting the ongoing need to assist students facing an immediate short-term challenge like a flat tire or expensive prescription. The Student Emergency Assistance Fund is there when they have nowhere else to turn. You can make your donation online on the League's website or leave cash or check to the LWV Education Foundation Board in the jar on the registration table tonight, or mail a check, pick up a foundation envelope and the registration table. Together, we can step up once again to help College of Marin students. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sue Ream, and I'm the Gala Chair for this evening, and I want to welcome you all to our event. It's so nice to have so many people here. We actually have record attendance this year, which is really exciting, and a record number of sponsors, so thank you very much to everyone. We're going to give you about 45 minutes now to enjoy your meal, and then we'll come back with the rest of the program. So have a good time, talk amongst yourselves, and we'll see you in about 45.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jan King. I'm Chair of Voter Services for the League of Women Voters. I want to thank all the volunteers in this room who worked with us on the March 5th election. I cannot say it enough. We could not do the work that we do without our volunteers. Thank you, 1,000 times thank you. Voter service really is the heart and soul of the League of Women Voters. All year round, our member volunteers do the work of voter education, providing information on voter registration, how to vote, to prepare voters for the next elections. Then, during election years like this year, we expand our voter education and outreach work to include specific ballot information for state and local races and measures, as well as for national races. We help voters prepare to vote in every way, from how to register, through where to cast your ballot, through comprehensive elections information. Many, many voters rely on the League as their #1 go-to resource for nonpartisan elections information. To remind you, some of the resources we create are familiar to many of us in the room. They are vote411.org, our online hub for everything related to the candidates, measures, and propositions on the ballots. Live and streaming candidate forums for selected local races, and pros and cons, videos that deliver a nonpartisan, unbiased look at both sides of state propositions, giving the public the ability to make their own decisions as better informed voters. Yeah. I do want to mention how important our community partnerships are to the League of Women Voters. Our materials are distributed to many communities in Marin County only because of our relationships with those partners. For instance, Canal Alliance, thank you very much. Community Action Marin. Performing Stars, thank you, Felicia Gaston. The Marin Multicultural Center, North Marin Community Center, West Marin Community Services, and all the libraries. All are trusted messengers in the county, and we rely on them to help us expand our reach to their audiences. Thank you to our partners for being such an essential extension of our work. Everyone is super engaged and motivated during federal election years. In addition, I want to remind you that the down ballot races for local city, town, county, and statewide elections, which typically garner less attention, are very important to the life of our Marin County community. These races have direct impacts on Marin residents in real material ways, from tax rates to land use decisions to public transportation and the quality of our public schools. Democracy begins at home. Do take your right to vote seriously and get engaged with your local elections, and get active too. The League of Women Voters is one of the most people-powered civic engagement organizations in the nation. If you haven't already done so, become a member of the League of Women Voters today. I'd also like to note that those of you who live in other counties, you can still join the Marin League and get active with Marin. And don't stop there. Volunteer with us in voter education and outreach in service of our democracy, starting right here in Marin County. We have a big election on November 5th. The more volunteer help we have, the more voter education and outreach we can accomplish. So join us as League members and lend your volunteer support to voter service in time for the very important November 5th election. Please remember, everyone, democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jan. That was great. Pardon? Closer to the mic. Is that better? Okay. All righty. We had it turned up to the max here. All right. Before we begin tonight's program, I want to thank my co-chairs for helping me put this evening on. Carol Joy, Cindy, and Gabrielle, I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you so much. I also want to give a shout out to Ann Wakely, who's way there in the back of the room. And lastly, and most importantly, I want to thank my husband, Craig Sharrow, because he makes some really great cocktails when I was like ready to jump off the edge. So I have several pieces of housekeeping before we begin. You may have noticed when you came in tonight, there were two beautiful orchids out there on the table. And we want to make sure that a couple of you go home with them. So you know the drill. If you look under your cup and there's a blue dot, or under your saucer of your teacup, and there's a blue dot, you get to take home an orchid tonight. Everybody's looking and hoping. I hope they're not at empty seats. Do we have winners? Oh my gosh. Yay! All right. Well, congratulations. What happened? What? Yeah. Well, Ann Wakely just tells me that it might be under the bread plate, so. No, but they were taken. All right, well, we'll have to figure that out on the way out. We will randomly choose someone on the way out. We have back here. We have a winner back here. All right, and we have a winner over here, so it all worked out. I haven't gotten there yet. Okay. All right, so you may pick your orchid up on the way out and take care of it, because you know how orchids need a lot of tender, loving care. All right, back to order, people. All right. As you can see, we have some AV equipment here tonight, and we have Damien, who's recording tonight's proceedings. So once the, I'm sorry, I'll say that again then, if I wasn't close enough. As you can see, we have some recording equipment here, and Damien will be recording tonight's proceedings. So this speech will be recorded and will be posted on our YouTube website once it's edited. So we'll let you know when it's available for viewing, so you can watch it again or send it on to your friends when it's available. So now as we move into the program, I'm going to kindly ask you to hold your questions until the end, because we'll have plenty of time for Q&A, and we'll have some roving microphones at that point so you can ask your questions. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker, Dr. David McCuan. Dr. David McCuan is a professor of political science who joined the facility of Sonoma State University during the historic California recall election in the fall of 2003. His scholarly expertise resides in two broad areas: American politics and American international relations. He received his doctorate from UC Riverside in 2002. He currently teaches courses in international and national politics, international security and terrorism, state and local politics, campaigns, elections, and political behavior. In the area of elections, Dr. McCuan's research focuses on the general impact of ballot measures, direct democracy, in the state of California and across the nation. He's a Fulbright scholar with overseas teaching, including teaching and research in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, and he's a very, very long list of additional credentials that would keep me up here all night. Dr. McCuan also has a strict adherence to bipartisanship. His commentary and analysis are sought after by multiple media outlets on the international, national, and local levels. What I do want to mention is Dr. McCuan's work with our league. We've been honored to work with him and his students on several occasions, starting in 2022. We've hosted two of Dr. McCuan's Sonoma State University senior seminar student programs as they presented their positions on voting rights and fake news in our Making Democracy Work series. In the fall of 22, each student in Dr. McCuan's senior seminar class joined the Marin League's pros and cons team and provided ongoing updates on their campaign financing for all the state ballot propositions. This important element of our pros and cons presentations enabled our Marin County voters to make informed decisions in the important midterm election. We're looking forward to working with Dr. McCuan and his students again for the November general election. And with that, I'd like to give a warm welcome to Dr. David McCuan.
Well, thank you all very much for having me. I'll try to broadcast my voice as best I can. In my talks, I usually say something that will tick you off. But this is the league, so that can't really happen. And I really also want to give a shout out to and a thank you for working with myself and the students, the great work that you do, the partnerships that you bring. Anne has been just wonderful to work with over the years. The folks that put together the gala tonight, the team, all of you, just phenomenal. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here. I'm a first-generation college student from Richmond. I'm not supposed to be up here, so it's a real pleasure to be with you. I want to thank my partner, Pam, the former mayor of Petaluma, who teaches me about real politics every day. And these are really tough times. It's really tough to be upbeat. It's really tough to be positive. This is only the most important election since 1860. That's all. So there's a lot at stake. So the league needs to do better for the great work that you do. And we will be partners with that because the future of democracy really is at stake. That's where we're at. And that's not just at the national level. That's what's happening in states. If you're a woman, if you're a person of a diverse background, if you're someone who's economically disadvantaged, if you're someone who shouldn't be in this room or around, we have an obligation. And one of the great things about working with the league is fulfilling that obligation. And I'm really positive about our future, and you should be too. The things I'm going to lay out, the challenges that we have, particularly concentrating on AI, are deep, but they are not, they can be overcome. We have to do a better job educating the media, not just young people. I work with journalists every day across the world, not for attribution, not to have my name quoted, but to explain to them what the heck is going on. And that's incumbent upon you with your neighbors, your friends. When my kids were younger, they're now in their mid to late 20s, we used to sit down at the dinner table and let them vote for us, and then we signed the ballot. That's probably illegal. But we let them make the decisions, and they did not vote the way that my former spouse and I would vote. But we let them vote to get engaged, and it was a fantastic exercise because now they do that themselves with their friends and with others. So I encourage you to pay it forward in that sense. Okay, with all of that, and we'll have plenty of time for your questions, and we'll deal with the elephant in the room about what happens in November, believe me. All right, first, let's just start with the idea that, look, American democracy and what's happening really is at a crossroads. It's at a crossroads for a number of reasons, and it's happening all across the world. And you know this. A quarter of the world's population is voting this year. Not just here, everywhere. And you don't just have to be concerned about what's happening in the Middle East or in Ukraine or in Taiwan or what's happening in emerging nations with their changing demographics and their challenges to understand that we really are at a pivotal time, especially this particular year. And as was just said, democracy is not a spectator sport. There are only 5,136 hours until the general election. Okay? And most of you in the room, I've seen many friends, you're political junkies. You know this. There's 5,136 hours until the general election, and that is not a lot of time. You have special elections coming up, you have down-ballot races going on, and you have conventions. And whether that convention is in Milwaukee for the Republicans or in Chicago, which has always given Democrats trouble for their convention. I can't tell my students that joke. You get it. All right? Either place, there were dramatic changes that happened for both parties, and the parties are on the cusp of change. And that is being driven by a politics that's stressed. And that politics is stressed along these 12 questions, maybe even broader questions. It's not just about the presidential election. It's about what's happening down ballot with states, with localities. California is more democratic than the recall of Gray Davis in 2003, much more deeply democratic. It's much more deeply blue, but it's also much more deeply red in certain places. And that division is stark. And that means the people that come into local office, if they're on school boards or planning commissions or on library service, they tend to be much more dramatic in their politics. And the one thing the League can bring is something related to tolerance. Tolerance of others and tolerance of other points of view. We have trouble with that even at a university. And as someone who's worked in practical politics for a long time, and you know how things have changed over your lifetime, you don't have to be despondent if someone doesn't share your point of view. This is a game for adults. So when we look at things like changing demographics or the re-emerging culture wars, which never really left us from 1968 forward, and we look at what is going on, all of this is framed by one giant thing today. These aren't the only 12 questions that are out there. These are the most important 12 questions that things revolve around. Because what we don't know what will happen over the next 214 days is a mass shooting or a tragic event or something that alters the best laid plans and things go sideways. The tragic killing of George Floyd altered the politics of that year and successive times. The Parkland mass shootings in Florida altered the politics of that particular time and brought young people into the fold like we had never seen. And you might complain about the guy who's orange, but he is the best get out the vote tool that there is for most demographics across the spectrum. He energizes people. Okay, there are other elements to this, that's true. But he does energize voters and engages them. He enrages them. But in 2016, 93 million people who were eligible to vote did not vote. 92.6 million. And as a guy who does a lot of numbers, that's a lot of people. 93 million people are mostly emerging voters, newer voters, or what I call the rising American electorate. These are people who are worried about their paychecks. These are people who are worried about the person who lives with them, and you know these people, and they can't afford to take care of their teeth or their car because they have a relative or a close friend who's cohabitating with them. And none of our politicians talk about that. None of them. It's the biggest crisis in America, the aging of our population and what that's doing to us, and what that is doing to young people and household fiscal stress. So when we look at these 12 issues, there are things we have to pay attention to because of things like deep fakes, because of the use of AI, and we're going to take a look at this here in just a moment. All right, so first, our politics is optimized for outrage. That's where it's at. It's optimized for outrage. And that means the tools of the digital revolution are optimized to take advantage of that outrage. The stressor is that digital revolution. And I put a few kind of contentious kind of pictures up there for you to look at. But the digital revolution is also driving immense positive things as well. It is doing things like increasing our productivity. It's doing things like bringing people into the fold to say that how they're being treated in the workplace or in the workforce or how they're not being trained in college is not right. There are more women in college than ever in United States history. That is a really good thing because they're making demands about how they'll be treated in the workplace, which is altering our politics. But that's creating great frictions. And you don't just have to be in Florida or Texas or Kentucky or Ohio to see that going on. The digital revolution that's primed for outrage is also doing a lot of really good things for us. And we can't forget that. However, while its upside is making us better, smarter, faster, and more productive, the downside is that it has heavy externalities, that which is extra not accounted for. It has heavy components that provide us some difficult ways forward. It spreads misinformation. So that's one reason we have to talk to one another more and educate one another and have greater tolerance. It creates increasing vulnerability, especially with young people. It creates problems related to displacing jobs, even while it's increasing productivity and altering the workspace, the family space, the home space, our own personal space. And these negative externalities outweigh the positive externalities that are occurring in the digital revolution. And we might think of this as 3 different versions of tech. One of those versions is ubiquitous tech. Ubiquitous tech is things like, the airplane. Ubiquitous tech is electricity. Things that you take for granted, all right? Very powerful tech, biotech. Creating vaccines, even under that previous administration, at a rate that was unseen in human history because of advances in biotech generated by some of those very powerful capabilities. And then there's the powerful, ubiquitous, and ever-growing threat of AI or artificial intelligence, particularly generative artificial intelligence, which is being seen as an icon or beacon of hope. A problem with ChatGPT, we're going to run a little exercise here at the end. We're going to generate something. We're going to do a little experiment if it works to show you how quickly this can happen. And I teach a course at Stanford every summer related to elections. And in that course, I take my students over to Google, and we saw Bard, now Gemini, and they're like, what the heck are you doing here? That is all run by a supercomputer over at Stanford, where literally you can put your finger on the pulse of AI generation on the internet. And that capability, that ubiquitous, all-powerful capability of AI is altering the outrage of politics and creating some problems, and therefore has some real challenges for us. And then there are those nattering nabobs of negativism. Remember that? Remember that? The doomsayers who are always going to talk about doom. It's the end of days, right? The best of America is behind us. And some of you may feel that way. But that's not what AI does. That's not what tech promises. It promises access. It promises democracy. It promises challenges that can, for us, actually increase transparency and the volume of what the electorate has before it. So I embrace this in my classrooms. I don't run from it. And you can't run from it either, as you're going to see from our exercise, or a little experiment we're going to do. But it also has these threats. All of these images I generated through AI. Shredded ballots, shredded DMV records, a Capitol that is in a place that the flag is half-mast. I kept trying to get it to generate the flag upside down, but it couldn't. I'm not that good at it yet, but I will get there. But this is all fake, right here. This is all fake. And these are the kind of images that we can use, or that you see, or that are generated that challenge us, okay? Just from simple tools that we have. So then the question is, okay, what do we do about this, Doc? What is going to happen? Okay, there are some key stress points for democracy as a result of this. Polarization. Oh, we all know about this, right? There is misinformation and there is extremism. Notice we don't use the term radicalism. I teach about terrorism. We don't think of people as terrorists. That doesn't advance us very far. We have to think of people as holding extremist behavior based on misinformation. And that extremist behavior becomes normalized in this environment. That's the difficulty. It becomes normal. That which is exceedingly there becomes there out in the extreme, becomes rational. And that rational idea, that rationalization of extreme behavior, that's the threat. And that's where AI can both save us and present some problems for us. There are general threats to the electoral process as a result. Some of this requires legislation, like cyber, voter suppression, or foreign interference. The Russians have not been interfering in elections in Europe since, say, 2016 or 2015. They've been doing that since, 1989, that we can document, all right? For very good reasons, because they were concerned about what was going on. And smart people in our government and smart people in academia and think tanks and in industry know this is what's been going on for some time. It's not new, and there are easy ways to thwart it. But AI creates some challenges for that. So there are also further impacts of external influences, like that foreign interference problem. Think of these things as disinformation campaigns, or things that deal with economic dependency, things that deal with geopolitical conflicts. Think of this slide or this point as there are things that happen that are not in the best laid plans of what goes on. And how campaigns adapt to this, how the league adapts to this, how we pivot to deal with these things is hugely important. We have to be more flexible and more malleable. And as we age, we know that our malleability changes. Let's say that. I'm trying to be polite. We know that our malleability and our adaptability to do things differently is a problem. And that means the current environment with our politicians is adaptable, and they're looking for ways forward to seek just that little bit of advantage, which means they're going to go farther and be more extreme and engage in more misinformation, which is incumbent upon us to educate not just young people and not just journalists, but each other to do a better job about what is going on for the people that are in the silos that AI recreates. Social media obviously shapes this political narrative. It does a lot related to this. As you all know, there's the influence or importance of algorithms and what is going on. Do you know from this computer, I can Google IP addresses using Google Analytics and Google Analytic tools to look at someone's name and to say if that name is Linda, assume that that name Linda is a female, track that IP address and look at all of her internet-related searches and what's going on and create an algorithm from that. That is pretty powerful stuff, because I want to know what she's searching about Joe Biden, or I want to know what's coming out of that IP address related to what is happening with Trump or whomever or whatever is going on. Just generically, we can do this from the power of this Mac right here, or PC or laptop for that matter. So what do we do about these trends? There are a couple of things. One, legislative reforms, which might be out of our power. Partnerships, particularly with tech. Partnerships not only with tech, but between tech and campaigns or political actors, tech and voters and campaigns and politicians, and partnerships and guideposts, best practices for what to do. And one of the best places, I have this, you can get the talk, I gave the slides to the league earlier, but there's a whole bunch of different URLs I put back there for you to understand some of this more precisely in the limited time that we have. But establishing best practices for tech would be particularly helpful for spilling that over, not just to voters, not just to companies, not just to campaigns or politicians or political actors, but for our future. Because it's the future cast component of this, as you're going to see in our little experiment, that might be very helpful. All right, so what do? We have to increase engagement. That means we have to engage with ChatGPT, which is old. Bard or Gemini is changing every 20 to 24 seconds. That's pretty cool. It's not something to be worried about. It's something to actually engage. Because ChatGPT is old and easy to deal with, but there are a lot of other products in the market that are emerging every day. And I have great colleagues leaving academia, taking their knowledge and leaving being pointy-headed academics in the ivory tower and going out and using that knowledge for AI, for what's going on. And that is kind of frightening, because some of them are a little kooky. Academics, you know, a little kooky. All right? So, but nonetheless, there are a lot of products out there, and ChatGPT is like an old version. Bard or Gemini is here and now and ongoing. We can take the news for what's going on and understand exactly and make a prediction about what Judge Cannon will do next, as an example. Hugely powerful. Okay, so it's used by legal beagles in this regard to power this and to think about the likelihood of what's going on, to take away in some ways the psychology of juries and judges and to look at what could happen. And any of us in the room can design those parameters. In addition, there's community involvement and the ever-growing important issue of transparency. And if there's anything that we do together well with you in the league, it's about increasing transparency and understanding that. So the one thing that needs to happen is AI has to be open source code. The way I'll explain it to you this way is if cold water fusion exists in Utah or North Korea and doesn't exist here, it ain't cold water fusion. Science has to be replicable. That is like job one. So open source is the key. And that is a huge element. Transparency matters in a big way. So we can build a very resilient democracy for the future. We can do this with certain guideposts and best practices that spread across industry and the government and voters and the future. Those components have to be integrated. This is a real heavy lift. This is the future. This is not the league just helping people to vote or to be nonpartisan or bipartisan. This is about thinking a way forward to engage these tools that can be powerful education components that we can't do in education, that we can't reach, because all the knowledge is out there now. So motivating students to really understand, motivating each other to really get what is going on, AI has that potential, which means we can do cool things like potentially solve cancer. It means we can do really cool things like creating peace in places where it doesn't exist. We can leverage these tools in ways that our politicians need to be checked on. And that's an important component of AI. So let's see how this works. Okay, hold on. I know you can't see that. Neither can I. Okay, you can't really see that either too well, right? So we're going to go to Gamma, Gamma, Gamma.ai. Okay? Ready? Yeah. Do we have any physicists in the room? Excellent. So, ready? Let me log in. I'm doing this all from scratch for you. The great thing about being an educator is doing stuff like this. Okay, here we go. You ready? We're going to explain quantum physics in 2 languages. Gamma.ai is a presentation software. Okay? It should create for us around 6 to 8 slides that explain quantum physics in maybe, I don't know, English and Spanish. Okay? 8 slides. It should take, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds. Let's see. Describe what you'd like to make. Explain quantum physics to a 12-year-old. Sorry. To a 12-year-old in English and Spanish. Explain quantum physics to a 12-year-old in English and Spanish. We can do something political, don't worry. You can download it as a PowerPoint or as a PDF. Wow, right? Yeah. There you go. Boom. How long that take? I'll save it, and if you want it, I'll send it to you or something. All right? Okay? All right? But Gamma.ai will do this for you. You create a username, it'll set it up. You could do this for anything. Explain the phenomenon of Donald Trump to X. Explain the challenges for Joe Biden to win re-election. Boom. And it'll create a presentation. This isn't about a paper or something like that. This is about creating a presentation to explain things, and it does it like that. And you can do it stylistically, quite dramatically different for all kinds of things. You can put in pictures if you want. You can generate, I just did a few things with this, not about politics. But like, explain to me Indy 500, or explain to me stock buys or shorting stocks because of his stock. I think we can short it and safely it'll be in single digits. We can make a lot of money. I'll donate to the league. But it does this, so that this power is pretty dramatic. All right? So I'm going to generate another one. What do you want to generate? Why are we here? Oh, okay, great. Okay, we want to add a few more things to that. So create something else. You take the middle frame that says generate, okay? Explain why we are here. Anything else you want to add?
In Lithuania.
In Lithuania. Okay. In Lithuanian or Lithuania? Oh, okay, awesome. Explain why we are here in Lithuania. How are we going to know if it's right?
We'll let you know.
Okay? In English and Lithuanian. Yeah, sure. Is it right?
That was good, yeah.
What? Yeah, I just asked him. How do we know?
It looks right.
He said it looks right. Okay. He's only a superintendent. So, I do want to get to your questions, and I don't mean to poke fun at this, but these tools are readily available and open up something that we used to find at the library. I was a geeky kid who read all of the old Encyclopedia Britannicas because I had friends, believe me. But it opened up a world that I wasn't familiar with, and that's what this does. But this tool requires, these tools require our vigilance, and that vigilance is transparency, open source code, and best practices. Again, I'm going to stop there. I want to get your questions, but thank you all very much. I really appreciate the work the League does. Please engage these tools, Gemini or Bard, not ChatGPT. Use something like Gemma or Gamma.ai and some of its adherents because it's hugely powerful. And also, if any of you are in leadership, or any of you are bosses, or any of you work with other people, you want to know what they're doing because they're going to be using these tools. So download them on your phone because your vigilance starts at home. Again, let's take your questions. Thank you again very much.
I have a loud voice. Can I ask my question? Okay, while she does that, I have an AI question.
Hi.
Hi. So,
I'll repeat your question.
okay, it was my understanding with AI, right, that it pulls from all the information on the internet. And if half of it is BS, then how do we know that what we're getting, am I really not loud enough?
Yeah, you're loud.
Now you are really loud. But, right, if it's pulling from everything that's on the internet, and we already know that half the stuff that's out there is not accurate or correct, or it's just made
You
up.
can set search parameters to not do that.
To just.
You could say, for
So it
example-
will know to screen out the stuff that is actually not factual.
So what I could do, for example, as an academic, is I say create a literature review from academic journals about polarization in the United States. And I look at that and I'm like, I couldn't write that well in graduate school. And it's phenomenal. So you can set those parameters. You could say, for example, just journals related to emergency medicine and the treatment of this type of trauma, or nursing or something. You could set those parameters. You can do that. But you can go out and get all the ickiness too. So we have that option. We have that alternative to open up new avenues that we didn't have before. Hi.
So I have a question. I do read these women that do analysis of politics that I appreciate their brains. So if I'm doing AI, like I'm getting, what am I getting? And a bunch of different people as opposed to a person's thoughtful point of view.
Yeah, that's a take on the previous question. Yeah, what you're not getting is the thoughtful process. So if we looked at those slides, if I did, for example, polarization in American politics, what you get are these descriptors that are kind of clinically neutral. What you want to be able to train people to do is analysis, to understand that thinking thing you're talking about, for how those folks are analyzing what's going on. You do not get that. So if you put in analyze polarization in American politics, or analyze polarization in the American 2024 general election, you'll get things pulled from all types of sources, but they aren't analytical. They're just like almost journalistic reports. So you do miss that. But I will say to you, as a consumer, as a generator of these things, it's actually pretty easy to pick that out. To understand that, oh, that's fine, but it only goes like this far. And you're a critical consumer and you're like, that doesn't give me an explanation with the consequences of that. The unintended consequences, which is called college. It's called thinking, right? You don't get that. And it's clear. So there are ways around it. It does, however, open up lots of voices. It does allow you to choose a lot of diverse opinions. It does provide that capability. That's really important. It provides access. That wasn't there before. I never thought of it that way, or I never thought of that point. That's really helpful for kind of moving the needle on conversations. Hi. Yes, sir.
I think the diversity of opinions is crucial for any kind of critical thinking, but when you mentioned earlier academic journals and things, peer review has a lot of faults, as important as it is, and okay, well, you know where I'm going here. And how do you weed out the poor academic studies? And I know part of that you can do by studying meta-studies rather than just individual ones. But how would you get AI to weed it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that you would do that is in Bard or Gemini, for example. What you do is you start with an initial search, and then you build on that continuous search to narrow that down, just like you would do old school in a library. You just narrow it. You can build on the same search to build that down, to filter that out, which goes to about the voices, but also narrowing your search to understand what's going on. So in that sense, it can be really powerful very quickly. So that can be helpful. Yeah, good question. Please.
That sounds like it's coming from the person who understands where it's coming from, but how about people who don't understand or are aware where it's coming from?
Yeah, okay. I'm ready for you. Good question. Yeah, thanks. So one thing you do is you run a series of tabletop exercises, like in tech firms, to test some of those things. To test people with different knowledge, like what you would do in a focus group type atmosphere, but you do it as a tabletop exercise to understand the implications of what you're doing, to how different audiences digest. Market research, you might think of it that way. but you're using your product in a real life interaction with people who have no knowledge and then with subject matter experts to see what they come up with differently. And that could be really powerful. But you put them in the same room. Now, if you're trying to eliminate bias or you're trying to eliminate perception, that is problematic. And I think that is something to pay attention to, which goes to kind of all your questions. Are you worried about its skewness? No problem. So what we'll do is, well, first remain skeptical, which all of you are in the audience are, which is important. Not enough voters are, because they tend to go down rabbit holes generated by some of the things in AI, which we could have generated here in Gamma.ai pretty easily. We could have created some echo chambers pretty powerfully. What else we need to do is we have to encourage some risk-taking behavior. And that means that we have to make sure that there aren't a few operators in this space. That's where open source code is really important. Because if it's just Bard or Gemini running out of one server complex on the Stanford campus, that ain't gonna work. If it's just one operator like ChatGPT, that's not gonna work. You have to democratize the space. So in legislation, for example, that democratic experimentation has to be provided for. And big tech is way against that. They don't want that democratization of technique because they want proprietary algorithms. And there's a very fancy term for that in political science. It's called BS. Okay? And you can't allow that to happen because you want idea generation from every 14-year-old and every 26-year-old and every MIT engineer and every kid in every school across the country. So in that sense, I think there's an embrace of democratization that can help with that. It may create a lot of echo chambers and a lot of bias, but I think we can handle that in the body politic. Doesn't anyone want to ask about November? Hi, yes. That's a physicist, excellent. Did you look at the quantum mechanics thing? Okay, okay.
So I actually am in software and I work with these systems, but I'm also in politics and I've got done knocking on a few thousand doors. I want to push back a little bit. In technology, we often tell the client, fix the process, don't try to throw technology at it. And from the talk, I'm wondering, how do you put some high touch into the high tech? Like, how is Gemini or Bard going to teach empathy? How is it going to teach the basics of consensus and compromise? Because I'm a geek too, I love technology, but I'm in politics and it's a human endeavor. And I know you know that, but I'm just wondering if you can speak to that.
Yeah, no, thank you, great question. So one thing you can do is you create exercises, not just these tabletop exercises, but put people into real environments and situations to solve real world problems where they have to arrive at consensus, where they have to arrive at cooperation and seeing the other. Actually put them in that environment where they have to broker a deal. Otherwise the software breaks. We have a lot of those simulative tools and they work pretty well for really hard things. Then they go out in the real world and then they break, as you know, or the clients misuse them. But I think there is actually great potential to do that. And that pushes the classroom, I'll use that as an example, outside from what's going on or outside the boardroom or outside the client meeting. There's real opportunity, I think, to move forward in those simulations to create the tools that you want. Peace, respect, tolerance, compassion, empathy, consensus. Let's do those things, not just solve X problem, because that can be solve Y problem or solve Z problem. We can build that in just as well, I think. That's what politics can do. Good question, thank you.
I just wondered if you see the Overton window getting a lot broader than it used to be, not to one side or the other, just generally broader.
It should, I think, first of all, what I've tried to do is be a little provocative about what AI can do. Secondarily, the old models, our training, our assumptions about things, I think in this world when it meets politics, are not subject to the laws of physics. and they're not subject to previous models. Those things are changing, and that's partly what I'm arguing to you, is we have to embrace this because it can be harnessed to do good things, positive things, like build better consensus and community and better acceptance of diverse opinions and diverse points of view, which is what's strangling, I would argue, our democracy. It doesn't mean we have to vote for the other side, whatever that side is for you. It means you have to promote tolerance and understanding of that to know how to thwart it. And I think that flattens the Overton window.
We have one more over here.
Yeah, I'm just curious your perspective on like the digital divide. You know, I think I've been working in international spaces. You mentioned that in your kind of repertoire. And I think in the United States, especially in California, we're very focused on technology and kind of getting to information. It has kind of a tendency towards kind of colonial thinking where I know more than you and I'm not imposing it upon you. And so like I think that's very sensitive given you mentioned George Floyd and how do we kind of address this digital divide? Even pre-pandemic, there was like a huge digital divide globally, and especially even in California. So how do you kind of...
Okay, so that's a really good question because it requires some better planning about not just providing machines, but providing the opportunity to understand what's going on, back to your question, about understanding the difference in information and how to harness that. And I don't think that's strictly for us as educators to do. And why I said that it requires broader, that requires not just government. I'm a boys club kid, this Boys and Girls Club now. It requires that interaction of nonprofits to reinforce what's happening, to help bridge that digital divide. It's not just handing out crap at school or providing time at school. It's reinforcing that behavior. The one thing that I've learned as an educator, the one thing I've learned in politics is you've got to give everybody and beat them over the head with it 10 times and then repeat it and then have them do it and then have them share it. And that, I think, will bridge the digital divide. That's not a resource. That's a time problem. That's a commitment problem. That's not a resource problem, in my view. That's what I would do. That's how I'd handle it. Good question.
Any other questions?
Ask about the November election. Ask about it. Well, actually, in relation to the November election, like how are you, when AI is making phone calls in fake voices, how do you detect?
So one thing we have to ask companies to do is make a pledge not to do that, and campaigns not to do that. And that shouldn't be a First Amendment issue. That shouldn't be, there are ways, if you're going to take public money, you're going to be regulated. Okay, even with this court. I would say the more difficult problem is not on the candidate side. The more difficult problem is on the issues or interest side, like on ballot measures or local issues or local interests, because with the dearth or loss of media coverage, there's no outlet to let people know what's going on, except through a post that you have on Nextdoor, or that's something. So that's where I think the league can actually be very, very influential in terms of creating outlets at the subnational level. I concentrate on statewide ballot measures, but there are a lot of things that happen locally in terms of issues. Candidates come and go, people come and go, but issues and interests persist. And it's that transparency around issues and interests that I think could be particularly helpful, where you could let out of the bag what's going on with AI. Like, for example, there are generators for campaign finance tools, bots that I send to reporters about what is going on in a campaign finance in a race. That's a tool they never had before. And it's delivered to them each night. Guess what they can write about each day? What big oil is doing, what big pharma, what big tech. That's transparency. Voters may still vote for those people, but that's democracy. But at least they have the information to display it. So that's where I think it would be hugely powerful. Unfortunately, those bots exist on X, so sorry about that. But I appreciate you asking about the space that is AI, because people tend to get worried about it and not ask. You're asking great questions. Yeah, hi.
What are the parameters of access that AI has to information or publications or journals that might be hidden behind a paywall? And can some entities be deceptive and hide their information from AI?
Oh.
Yes, they can be deceptive. Paywalls are not a barrier.
So AI
You bank on the
has more
internet.
access to information than just a regular person.
It can, yes, it can, yes. Depends on the area. Some things about like nuclear security, no. But in terms of like, I'll use an example. I teach a course on terrorism. I take students out to websites that you're not supposed to go to, okay? We do that through the university's security system. This is being taped, shit. We do that through the university's security system, okay? Because they can't go to those places at home, because if they did, it'd be a problem. But then from going to those places, without clearing our cookies, we can generate ideas that would appeal to people about extremist behavior based upon those groups. Imagine what a counter-extremism, imagine what a counter-terror tool that is, to de-radicalize people. Because we have, in other words, we read their stuff, we communicate with them, we talk to them, and then we can generate tools from that about how to leverage their understanding for where they're wrong to try to potentially de-radicalize them. That's pretty powerful, because then it's a battle of wits, it's not a battle of arms. So that's a pretty cool, that's pretty fun, and we can do that like right from the laptop in class, evading the university security firewalls.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So I'll ask the question that's sort of the elephant in the room. Can you talk a little bit about the November presidential election and what it would take for either of the candidates to win?
So remember, 93 million people didn't vote in 2016. They tended to be newer voters. And we know, this is where AI can be helpful. We know that people lie when they talk to pollsters. 45% of college-educated white women voted for Donald Trump in 2016, and all the models suggested that number was in the low 30s. That's because it was socially unacceptable to say you were going to vote for him. So that's where AI could help us generate some models about what people are really thinking, online especially. So voter turnout matters, engagement matters. That means young people, or people really 18 to 35, that's how we measure them. That's a problem, because a 35-year-old is not an 18-year-old, or not a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, as anyone, as you all know. But what are the fancy quantitative models that I run and Monte Carlo simulations show that Donald Trump has topped out about 46 or 47% of the popular vote. However, no Democrat has received more than 54% of the popular vote since 1964. So that means a Democrat by generic is tapped out as well. So that means a regional third-party candidate could play an important spoiler effect. That's where regional candidates are important. RFK Jr. Has I think it's the 12th constitutional amendment. He and his vice president both reside in the same, his vice presidential candidate both reside in the same state. He lives in Malibu. Well, okay, he has a house, I think, in the Hamptons. I think he has a house in Massachusetts. He has a house in upstate New York. So, but he's registered to vote, I think, here, I think. So that's a problem. But his regional effect in the Northeast, particularly in New Hampshire, could be important. His regional effect in Utah, okay, not so much. But if you look at the states that he's targeting Democratic-leaning states, particularly Georgia, and particularly Mississippi. Who is he going after? He's not going to win the presidency. He's going after African-American men. For a Democrat to win the presidency, you need 2/3 of the Latino and Latina vote. There's a problem. We don't talk about this enough. It's called machismo. Okay? So that affects that number. Ask Hillary Clinton. For a Democrat to win the presidency, they need 75% of the African-American vote. That is not a problem. African-Americans vote at high rates, but African-American women are way smarter about what they're doing with their votes. And African-American men are upset and enraged and worried. And if you can carve out 1 out of 4, guess what you've just done? You've swung the race. And that's a big deal. That's why you try to get on the ballot in Mississippi, and that's why you try to get on the ballot in Georgia. And it's Georgia and Pennsylvania, less Michigan and Wisconsin, but those two states as well, that were the states that have had the most legislation passed since 2021 to prohibit people or create barriers to voting. It's Georgia and Pennsylvania. Those are the two states that matter. The other thing I'll add to this is in those models, there are only 13 to 15, 13 to 16 counties in the United States that matter and elect the President of the United States. And that number of truly purple people is between about 103, 104 to 106, 108,000. Those are the persuadable voters. That's what it comes down to. Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. I'm not sure whether to be optimistic or not, but thank you very much, everyone. And there's cupcakes left over, so please take some home to your loved ones and your family and all of that, and we look forward to seeing you soon.